Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 2 of the Trainers Forum. I'm your host, Dino Santos, and I'm here tonight to bring you an episode that's packed with information, packed with trivia, and as well as packed with teammates from my Airsoft team many years since. And tonight, we're also going to explore how Airsoft fits into the training milieu. In other words, before the pandemic, how it worked for companies who were keen on improving the way that training could occur. So sit back, relax, and enjoy yourselves. And I'd like to invite now my teammates to introduce themselves so that you get to know them as well. So who'd like to start?
Well, sige, ako na.
Roger that.
Hi, I'm Rex Villarosa, and I've been playing Airsoft since 1985.
Wow. Rex, although it may seem a little odd now, but we all have call signs like I've been baptized as Knife Man. So what were you called back in the day?
Oh, my call sign was Almighty.
All right. Yeah. And I can certainly agree because Rex, by the way, is the acknowledged father of airsoft here in the Philippines. So it's quite an honor to have him on our show. Who'd like to go next?
Okay. So since Rex started in 1985, I'm Con Abraham. I started Airsoft in 1988. And I got baptized in the crucible of Valdez playing field.
And would you mind sharing what your call sign was?
Actually, back then, we don't have any call sign.
Okay.
And it was only later, when I say later, about 2015, I just adopted the call sign because we're using radio. But back then, no call sign. Just
Roger that.
nickname.
Okay. So, and now, of course, we're here with an honored guest, somebody who took the time to join us, though he would have been here previously, but tonight he's here. Ray?
Hello, good evening to everyone. My name is Rey Liwanag, and I've been playing with Action Games League around 1992 to 1993. And as Con mentioned, we didn't have call sign during that time. Maybe later on, uh, my call sign was Colonial Marine.
Cool, cool. So, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, um, we are part of a generation that considered airsoft as a true sport of gentlemen players playing by gentlemen's rules. So let me start off by saying how we first met. You know, this group years and years ago. I think this was around 2003 for me, anyway. I did bring together Con, Rex, and Ray, and a whole group of other players from AGL to act as the opposition force for a client that's MCO to have a team building at what we call Piscor, which is a place that allowed people to simulate combat in a friendly way. And ever since then, I noticed that um, Airsoft played a very significant role in team building in the sense that it was unconventional, definitely interesting, and it made people bond. And so as you can see in our gallery, in our group tonight, how long we've been together because of that special bond that can be built in airsoft. So I'd like to defer now and turn over to Rex call sign Almighty to tell us a little bit more about how airsoft got started in the Philippines. Because I know that it wasn't always AEGs or uh, gas blowback. Back in the day, it was something else, and I'd like Rex to be able to share that with us.
We call them springers or spring powered airsoft guns. It can be a pistol, it can be a rifle, but it's what is locally known as teka teka. Okay, teka muna. One one cock, one shot. So you have to wait. Anyway, I got started with my brothers. We're five brothers, one cousin, and we had nothing to do during weekend. And somebody had this idea of taking our. We had this collection of toy pistols, airsoft pistols. So we gave one each, and then played all around the house and the yard. That's how we started. That was actually even before 1985. Maybe as early as 1981, 1980. 1985 was the start of bigger games, between teams, barkada teams, or relatives, brothers, friends, or classmates. We started playing team versus team around 1985.
Mm. Okay.
Back then, from the early 80s until around 1988, 89, there were no Fulotos. And there were very few were gas powered. We were mostly using spring powered airsoft guns.
Mm. So, in other words, it's either you develop a really good aim or you knew how to hide yourself really well.
Yeah, well, like I said before, we called it survival game because the goal was not to get shot.
Right.
And the nice thing about starting the game back then was because we were more or less even in terms of firepower.
Mm.
We all had spring powered guns, roughly about 8 to maybe 12 shots per gun, and we were each limited to one magazine each. So you had to make every shot count.
Mm.
So you're even. The your edge should be your skill,
That's
your
right.
cunning.
Mm.
Diskarte yan eh. Okay. Not firepower.
Now, before I call on our other panelists tonight, I'd like to just confirm with Rex, where would you say airsoft started? Was it a Philippine phenomenon or did it start somewhere else and then got brought here? And how did it come to the Philippines if it started somewhere else?
It actually started in Japan.
Okay.
The Japanese have very high interest in guns, but they cannot own them.
Hmm.
So they took interest in replica guns.
Okay.
And then until it evolved into a replica gun that shoots plastic BBs.
Hmm.
And then they regulated it to shoot only below 300 feet per second using 0.2 gram BBs. Yun yung technical definition ng airsoft. Original definition of airsoft in Japan.
Roger that. So, in other words, back in the day, you could go to a playing field and play with one another and not be worried about injuring anybody seriously because the velocities were very safe and well within what is considered gentlemanly rather than say what's currently present now. So let me turn now over to say Ray and to ask him briefly, Ray. There has been some controversy over the decades, I suppose, in between. How do we differentiate airsoft from say paintball? What's your take on?
Actually, um, as Rex mentioned before, airsoft is considered as paintball in Japan. So the difference lies because in paintball they use paintballs are gel coated and liquid inside, and when it struck you, it should break. Also, I've noticed with paintball that most of their games are capture the flag. So if you're going to ask me, I don't think it focuses more on military simulations. Eh. Unlike when we started with airsoft, we were also gung ho, and during that time, the normal outfit would be, Vietnam type outfit with your M16s, XM177. So we were already simulating that scenario during that time, and most of the games that we played were search and destroy. One team would hide somewhere deep into the jungle, and another team would be hunting them down. So we were focused and we were trained more on tactics.
Mm,
When we were able to experience paintball, the difference lies is that most of them are capture the flag, and another reason about paintball is that their ammunition is so expensive. Uh, to be honest with you, I discovered Action Games League through one of the first defense conventions, or what you call now as defense, the arms show, way back in field site.
mm,
I was there, and I saw Vince Padilla. He was demonstrating paintball, so I was engrossed in paintball. So I go, oh, this is good. I'd like to try this. And on the other booth, I saw the booth of Action Games League, and what amazed me was that the replica guns, they look so real, and I was a fan of the MP5 that time, so I was handling everything. But then I asked them, how do you consider a hit here when you get hit? And then one of the AGL members there, I still remember, si Dong Quadra, he said, well, it's based on honesty. At that point, sabi ko, parang corny ha. Walang magmamarka. So, honesty. So, focus ako dun sa paintball. Kaya lang later on, I found out, sabi ko, parang paintball is more expensive because you buy the gun, ang ibibigay nila sa inyo was a teka-teka paintball gun with limited ammunition.
mm.
So, later on, I scrounged for Springer tights. I saw one at some hobby stores, and then when I went to Gallery at that time, I saw a Walter MPL, and then they said, "Sir, you go to Green Hills. Marami sila doon." And that's where I discovered Tokyo Hana. And my God, doon ko nakita yung lahat. And then I saw Rex uh, pamphlet, the survival game, where everything is real except the dying. So I got the pamphlet and got in touch with the number, the location of the house where they said that they held monthly meetings. And by that time, uh, we were starting to purchase our own airsoft pistols, which are already gas powered but non blowback.
Mm.
And that's the time I went to Rex's house and he said, "Oh, we have a game. This is how they do." And I was so excited. But I said, sabi ko, ito lang yung gamit namin eh. We don't have, tapos sabi naman niya, Rex, we have rentals naman there. So you can rent for this amount. And then, I discovered nga na, parang mas mura itong gastos nga ito compared to paintball. So, na-shift yung ano ko. I never tried paintball na. I went to Airsoft directly. And then, I met all the pioneer players. Later on, I met Con. Tapos, nakakatawa because even for a newbie at that time, yung some of them, actually, sabi, ito gamitin mo to. Yung sarili niyang, the first weapon I used was a KG9, a Marazin KG9, which eventually binenta rin sa akin. So that's how it started. And then, at that time, we were already, the gas use was Freon or Flon. So it's
Ah,
called Flon 12. And then, it evolved later on using CO2 with gas regulators. At that time,
oh,
I
so
would
Ray,
consider,
I love the fact that you're so technically knowledgeable about the differences between airsoft and paintball. And by the way, for our viewers, we're not knocking paintball. Paintball is a legitimate sport in and of itself. It's just that for the people you see in this panel tonight, we fell in love with airsoft because of the realism, because of the affordability, and because of the wider, broader range of learning opportunities that is possible. As Ray has explained, you learn tactics, you got to know the gun culture in a safe way, and especially learn to begin to respect firearms and respect each other and your teammates. Now, as Ray mentioned, very interestingly, he saw that pamphlet that came from Rex, and that was what drew him initially. So let's turn now to Con to tell us a little bit more because Con has also been, like Ray, a font of knowledge, a cornucopia of information as far as airsoft seems to be concerned. Con, from your perspective, how did AGL uh, start and what drew you to it?
Okay. Well, first off, it was focus. Focus on the sense that the leadership just tells that this is just a game, okay? And this game doesn't make you any better than the organic, than the real world. You're in here for the sports to have fun, for the camaraderie. And at the same time, when I started out, there was no sense of feeling bravado amongst us, except for the up ahead of me for a month, Mike Santos, the late Mike Santos.
Hmm.
Other than that, it was again on the essence, on the vibe of it's a sport, it's a game, let's all have fun and the camaraderie. And that what attracts me to AGL and to the community itself.
So in other words, you were really into it for the experience of pitting your skills with other equally interested people. So it wasn't so much about the guns for you as much as it was for the camaraderie, the friendships that you eventually developed. So let me turn now back to Rex to tell us more about the ages, the birth of AGL. Uh, so you started out with your five brothers, Rex. How was the name chosen? Action Gamers League is such an iconic acronym. Where did the idea come from?
Me.
Okay.
No, it went this way, no? Up to a certain point, we kind of got tired playing with just each other. My brothers, some friends. And then when I discovered a few stores that were willing to import their soft gun, um, I wanted to invite them over. So, like us, when they start, they usually bring in their own friends, their brothers, their relatives, cousins. So they'd have themselves a team,
Mm.
and then there'd be another group would form, like maybe the San Juan boys. They'd buy from Green Hills, from Tokyohana, and then they'd pull their friends along. They'd all buy their own guns, and so we had something like 4 or 5 different groups at the time.
Okay, so and yet, despite the diversity of groups, would you say that they were fairly the same in terms of mindset and purpose?
Yeah, because at the time the idea was fairly new.
Mm.
So they'd latch on to something that's already established.
Mm.
And at the time, we were established.
Mm.
We played by a certain set of rules, and we would work towards getting a venue every weekend.
Mm.
All they had to do was show up. All they had to do was show up, have a gun, any gun, Springer, gas tight, AEG, and goggles.
Yeah, of course, to protect your eyes. Yes.
The nice thing about it was that the three things that you have to have: your attendance, your gun, and the bare minimum pair of goggles. You could
Mm.
play with that, and
Mm.
that's why the rules were so tailored to keep the power level flat, even
Mm.
whether you be an experienced player or walk-in newbie.
Mm.
At the common, it was so easy to go into the game.
Mm.
You could play even with an 8-shot Springer
Mm.
against 30-shot long rifle,
Mm.
and you're still even.
Mm.
Okay, it's a little, the dress up part was pretty much up to the individual whether he wants to dress up or not. You can you can play in blue jeans and a sweatshirt, or you can play in full USMC camo getup, or you
Right.
can you can go into the game wearing rayadillo.
So a kind of a cosplay could be the net effect if you so desired.
Yeah, I mean, at the time it didn't matter what you wore,
Mm.
because people were not trying to, wala pang subcultures eh.
Mm.
Okay, cosplay was unknown at the time.
Mm.
Milsim was unknown at the time. Reenactment was unknown at the time.
Mm.
Na yung geardos were unknown at the time. So you come as you are. Have yourself a gun and a pair of goggles, and you're off.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Rex. Now, I'd like to ask Con and Ray. It's up to either of them who'd like to start, but could you share, for example, your most memorable airsoft experience? I know that both of you have been playing for a very long time, and Ray is still playing up to now. At least as much as the pandemic will allow him to leave his house now and then. Ray, for you, so maybe I'll start with Ray. Uh, what to you is your most memorable airsoft experience?
The first one was our stint at Marine Base Ternate, where we were invited by the Philippine Marines to do a demonstration game using our airsoft guns at the Marine Base in Ternate.
Mm.
And I don't know, I think Con has a picture of that, of the group. This is one of the most memorable because imagine we were fetched by uh, 6 by 6, and then we that was the first time I was able to fire an M16 at the range, because after the game, one of the commanders there was uh, showed us the M16 and the range, so I was able to fire a few shots then. The other unforgettable experience I would have is also what I would call as the paintball versus airsoft game, strictly within the Alpadi range. You mean we brought airsoft into Vince's backyard and we fought them off there? That was really, really classic. No? I mean, for those who were able to join that. No? So those are the two things which are very memorable for me. The one with Marine Base Ternate, and the other one that the game at Vince's backyard itself. So
Thanks.
so
Yeah.
memorable. Yeah. And I don't think that any other team was able to do that within Vince's backyard. I'm proud to say, as Rexwood said, that we blaze the trail, others follow. I have not heard of any airsoft team who were able to pit it against Vince boys strictly in their backyard. Wala, wala. They can never brag about this that they were able to do this. No. So that is one of my memorable, and the other one with the Marine Base Ternate. That was two of my most memorable experiences with the AGL.
Thank you so much, Ray. And it's almost sad that Facebook and things like videos and camera phones weren't available then, because those would have been so nice to be able to show to our viewers. Although we do have a few pictures that can be shown in a different part of this particular episode later on, but they were very few. So most of what you're hearing now from seasoned players like Ray, Con, and Rex are from their memories. And certainly, as Rex mentioned and Ray mentioned, they were unforgettable, absolutely indelible as part of his uh, reason, his joy for playing in this game. And as he said, blazing a trail for others to follow. So I'd like to ask Con now, what are your two most memorable AGL experiences?
Actually, it's more than two.
Okay, we might be here the whole night.
Uh, okay, I'll just focus on the 2 gigs of AGL.
Okay.
First one is at the Grande Island, Rex, correct? In Subic, Grande Island. Okay. In Grande Island, we were pitted against this. How can I say this? This rich kid, them rich kids. So when I say rich kids, they were
Wyvern, Wyvern.
No names,
curb
no
your
names.
enthusiasm. Curb your enthusiasm. Upsec, per sec.
Okay, OPSEC.
Anyway,
Okay.
Okay, so why was it so memorable? Okay,
okay.
given that.
It's because they trained. When they say trained, they really took it because the passion of the sports is slowly increasing during that time 90s.
Oops, sorry. That's all right.
Blooper. Anyway, so they were training. They said they were training, and at the same time, we also prepared in a sense, just planning out verbally. There were no physical preparations for us, except I just did some free jogging. And when we made the raid to them, we weren't even using night vision goggles. We were just using starlight, ambient light, and we were successful enough to raid them to the point that we really eradicated all of them with less casualty on us. And we were using basic tactical skills that we just learned just by observing. Even then, there wasn't any YouTube. It was more of like sharing amongst us of what we know.
Hmm.
And the second one is at I think it was on another playing field, or okay, it was also in Subic, Subic or Corregidor,
Okay, Corregidor. Yeah,
and
I heard about that. Yeah, do go on.
particularly in Corregidor, it became quite of memorable for me because actually I think I was shooting them, but I think it was more of the entity that was I'm shooting at. But
Okay.
because it was really solid and visual, those dark figures coming to me, and they were like, I think they were like marching, but I just mug dumped at them, and I said, why are they why are they admitting their hit? And from that on, I kind of learned that other players had similar experiences. So it wasn't really more of the force on force, but more of the experience. And at the same time, it was really fun because we weren't we were just more bonding again. At the same time, just having this camaraderie on a unknown place for us. So those are the two things.
Thank you so much, Con. Now, as you can hear, my dear viewers, a common thread seems to run in this entire panel, and that is one, that there was a desire to make friends, to bond with people, sharing a common activity. Two, that being a sportsman, a gentleman, was crucial to them. And and third is that none of their weapons, when used, was meant to harm, but it helped them to focus on the tactics, the planning, the strategizing, and really the crafting of the ability to perform better as a player. So moving to the present, I'd like to. Oh, I suppose the viewers probably want to know what's my two most memorable experiences. Well, like Con, I do have quite a bit, but I'll focus on two. One is the experience I had when I played in Haribon, which was, I think, where was Haribon done?
I think that's Robin Sage.
The Robin Sage. Yeah,
Rizal, Tanay Rizal.
in Tanay
Tanan.
Rizal.
Uh,
That was memorable for me because it was, I think, my first time to do something that was realistic. And because of my background, like Rex, I underwent ROTC training and then COCC training in UP. So a part of me was intrigued with the idea of something that was MilSim, or military simulation. So I went there fully prepared to engage fellow players as realistically as possible, only to hear things like, why, ba't hindi tayo pwede maglaro dito? Dito na lang, ba't pa kaya umakyat pa sa taas? And then like part of me was saying, what, you paid for this realism? Why are you complaining now? And then later on, when we start to go uphill at around a 32-degree angle, literally just climbing up the hill, uh, people were starting to say things like, kailan tayo kakain? Pagod na ako. Uh, Dito na lang tayo. Like, part of me was again reacting, and there was the preponderance of people taking pictures. One lady, as a matter of fact, who was in my team, was so busy taking pictures that I wondered, what is she going to duck anytime soon? So, to me, that was memorable, and especially so because Kon at that time won an award, and he did receive a small statuette for being the best dressed player at that field. He was carrying a backpack. It was really heavy and doing all of that without once complaining. The second most memorable thing for me was a game that Con and I went to in Fort Magsaysay, which was called Recondo. That's in keeping with the Vietnam era trainings that commandos used to undergo. And we spent 3 days, 2 nights out in the boonies, being as realistic as possible. And one thing I'll never forget, are the two memories from that encounter were, where Con was saying, yelling at the top of his voice when all the other players were hiding their AEGs under what do you call this,
Canopy.
raincoat,
Poncho.
a poncho.
Poncho.
They were so afraid that their toys would get wet and short out. But Con was out there in the rain that wasn't vertical anymore because the wind was so strong. Horizontal rain, ladies and gentlemen, so strong. And Con was saying at the top of his voice, "Is this all that you've got? Bring it on!" And like the contrast was amazing because everyone was hiding under the trees. Con and I were still out in the rain. We couldn't care less. I mean, that's what we paid for when we went there, for the realism. And then the second part of that was how we would sleep on the rocks on the ground, and then everyone else would just go back to their hotels where they could get a shower, they could get a meal. But no, we were there. So that was essentially the 3 days and 2 nights that were pure misery for me. But at the same time, glorious in the sense that I got what I felt was my money's worth, and some idea of what our troops go through when they engage in an actual patrol. So to me, that was really an investment that was well made. And for those of you listening and interested to join the sport, I challenge you to consider the Milsim aspect of it so that once this pandemic is over and they get offered again, hopefully AGL may offer it, do consider joining our activities. So now I'd like to go back to Rex and maybe to invite him to talk about the current state of airsoft in the Philippines. He did mention that there are now so many subcultures. Um, are there subcultures that you still kind of like, Rex, or are the subcultures now things that fill you with concern and trepidation?
Well, as I mentioned, no, during the early days, we were united in the sense that we all just wanted to have fun,
Right.
and that meant uh, getting to play something like cowboys and Indians, okay, with shooting each other with guns that fired BBs or guns that fired paintball. Okay, if I may digress ng konti, uh, airsoft and paintball are essentially the same game,
Okay.
only different tools.
Right.
One that fired plastic BBs and one that fired uh, gel ball.
Mm.
Okay, and then airsoft was I wouldn't call it really invented, but it was born out of people's interest in real guns,
Mm.
or at least something that looks like it. Okay,
True.
paintball was born out of something that they used to mark cattle in trees to be cut down.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
They were called markers, not guns. Because when lumberjacks would go to the forest, they'd look at the tree from afar. They needed to let other people know, or the cutters know which tree to cut down. They'd shoot it with the paintball gun.
Mm.
And when ranchers would round up or would have cows or cattle to round up, and they could not round them all up before nightfall, they'd use a paintball gun to mark which one among the cattle is theirs.
Clever.
And then in their off time, the lumberjacks, maybe the lumberjacks or the cowboys would shoot each other.
Okay, so that's when it became a game, but originally it was just a tool for marking trees or marking cattle. Mm.
Yeah, whereas airsoft was intended for playing.
From the outset. Yeah.
from the onset. Yes.
Mm.
Okay, so it's essentially the same game using different guns.
Mm.
And now while airsoft they could yung it caters to the interest of those who like gun, it also catered to those who like to dress up.
Right.
So merong cosplay
Mm-mm.
and eventually LARPers,
All right.
live
What's
action role play.
okay? Mm.
That's what Milsim guys are. They are LARPers.
So
Okay.
true.
Yung paintball, initially, tried to stay away from being militaristic. That's by design. Because their laws at the time in the US or North America was very strict on military like looks and activities.
Mm.
Naging ano na lang yan eh. It got to be uh, it pressured the paintball manufacturers as well as the lawmakers to allow paintball to go into being militaristic yung itsura because the business was losing out to airsoft guns. Yung yung market was moving towards airsoft and away from paintball.
Mm.
That's why even early paintball here, they weren't they weren't much into dressing up the part because you don't go you can't have a marine carrying what look like pieces of pipe put together. No?
Right.
I'm not putting the guns down. Huh? I
No.
mean, they worked. They did what they were supposed to do, and
Mm.
they look they didn't look like guns because they were required not to look like guns
Mm. Mm.
until only recently. Now, over time, even yung airsoft nga gave birth to subgenres. Speedball players, cosplayers, milsim players, and what would you call those? Yung we cannot
Skirmish.
form the form.
Skirmish.
At saka yung mga casual players. Now, ang problema doon, yung ano nila they try to mold yung image of airsoft into their image,
Mm.
narrowly into their image. Like, airsoft should be milsim, or airsoft should be cosplay,
Mm.
no? Whereas yung original Japanese concept of the game, they throw them all up, they mix them all up.
Mm.
You'd see fully dressed up cosplayer running around with a girl dressed up in Sailor Moon and maybe dressed up as Voltes 5 carrying sci-fi rifle, maybe somebody dressed up in Vietnam greens or somebody dressed up in colonial marine uniform with pulse rifle, and the same thing for the other side. But then Western players started playing it uh, with team uniforms, team identities,
Mm.
team strategies, or reenactments.
Mm.
No, and then they'd be going for higher FPS, more power,
Mm.
more ammo.
Mm.
They would try to have the technology edge over the other side.
Mm.
Now, that, for me, really, the realism ends with with their uniforms.
Mm.
You can't have a company of soldiers all carrying light machine guns.
Right.
But then they're all effective. Even their SMGs are effectively light machine guns,
Mm.
firing at a rate of 3,000 rounds a minute.
Yeah,
Hindi na,
that
hindi na realistic yun eh, di ba?
right.
Okay.
It
So,
becomes area munitions rather than something for accuracy.
and where it's not anymore a matter of skill, but a matter of logistics.
Mm.
Who has more ammo, who has more power, who has a lot more money to spend on a ghillie suit, night vision equipment, state of the art body armor, and the latest multicam or
Or pattern.
digital camo.
Yeah.
You know, where does the walk-in newbie go in there?
Mm.
How does a newbie fit in?
Mm. Okay, so that sounds like a valid observation for many of the things that have been happening now because of what's effectively become an arms race.
It has become an arms race. It's an evolution even during our gas gun days. So during that time, it's not more on power, but we would focus more on accuracy.
Hmm.
So we have the different types of modification which were to be used to our gas guns. And
Hmm.
then later on, by using regulators, we discovered that we could increase the pressures of our gas guns to more powerful, to more FPS, more powerful. Would you imagine, Dino, that the if you're going to test an AEG to find out the approximate FPS, you were shooting at the base of an aluminum can at point blank range using zero point 0.2 BBs. So that's how you determine that if it penetrates to the bottom of the aluminum cans, that would be at around 450. But during our times, our testing grounds were different. We were testing it on tin cans, Nido, Skyflakes. So you can just imagine how how thick those were. Then if you firing semi-auto like one, two, three, then at the third hit, it would penetrate the tin can. Could you imagine how much pressure, how much power your gun has during that time? When we were already at Alpadi, we were already given instructions na open FPS, meaning, sige, sagad ninyo yung inyong mga regulators because we know for a fact na since our BBs were non-marking, we have to hurt them to hear them say hit.
Hmm.
Otherwise, kaya nilang tiisin yun, hindi aamin yung mga paintballers na yun eh. And the advantage you also had is that the paintballs break in branches. They do not penetrate. So we can use the branches as cover and then we could fire back. The BBs would break the branches. But then, yun nga yung downside. Pwede kang hindi aminan eh.
Hmm.
So we had to put that in. But then, as Rex said, ganun ang nangyari. Then with the advent of the AEG, yun eh, palakasan, faster FPS, and here's the catch. With the entrance of the ACMs, all China made, every Tom, Dick, and Harry who doesn't know anything about firearms or airsoft can now own one and brandish it and do as he pleases. So that's the generation gap and the difference in culture between old time players like us
Mm,
And I don't know kung anong year sila, maybe millennials or what. Kasi pumasok na eh. I mean, ACMs, they're at par with the Japanese airsoft guns.
mm,
Easy to upgrade, cheaper parts, you're using China parts. The best part about it, when you buy the gun, it's already in full metal configuration.
mm,
Unlike before, during a time, it really cost us an arm and a leg to be able to buy because everything was Japanese made. Everything changed. Kasi, as Rex said, those newbie players, as I would consider them, they would always like direct action eh. Con would notice that, alam nila na, well, like in our case, even if it's a 45-minute game in Rolling Hills, walang nangyari, nagkaroon ka Mexican standoff, it's okay. And if I don't hit somebody or I don't have a kill, but I survive, that's okay. Because as Rex said, the essence of the game is to survive. To survive, let's say if you're under fire and then you don't get hit, then it makes you think, what am I going to do to get myself out of this mess? What
mm,
am I going to do to get even? How do I flank this? How do I outflank these people?
mm,
And the new players are not really even familiar about that. I remember one time that Con was telling a story somewhere in Tigerland when they were firing at Con. Con was able to outflank them and come from behind. And when he started firing, sabi, ba't nandiyan ka? Hindi pwede yan. Bakit ka dyan sa likod ng galing? Hindi. You ask Con about it and they're like, ha? Ha? Hindi ko pwede gawin yun? Oh my God. I mean, di ba, parang it's already a different genre of players, as Rex has mentioned. Hindi sila sanay dun sa mga old-timers who would be using these same tactics. That's where our advantage lies because they do not have the patience. When it's
You
a search and destruction, they do not have the patience. They would keep on moving and moving while you're at a certain place just waiting for them. So those are some of the factors which influence the current state of airsoft right now.
okay, thank you so much, Ray. At this point, I'd like to turn to Con, just to ask, you're still playing, or you're very selective now with the games that you join or the activities that you join. Is there a particular reason why you become very selective?
Well, first off, it costs money and time to participate in one. That's why I need to select which is sensible and has substance and learning experience
Mm,
rather than just purely joining for the sake of experiencing. Because remember, I started back in 1988, so I kind of evolved. You just don't play for the sake of playing. You also play for the sake of building camaraderie, testing yourself, at the same time learning from the experience.
mm. Thank you so much, Con. And I'd like to also add to our viewers that keep in mind that as the sport evolved here in the Philippines, it's taken a lot of different shapes. So we now have tournaments. We now have teams that really get dressed, as Rex said. They really invest in the equipment, and that's why companies have started to see, especially during the early to mid 90s, the training potential of the sport. Heck, even the military would use airsoft players as a training tool to help regular forces get to sharpen their skills, because as they would often say, airsoft players are less predictable than regular forces because they don't really think the same as regular forces do. So um, let me turn back to Rex and ask him, um, what fearless forecasts would you have for, say, the future of the sport? Where do you think it really should be headed? And, how do we attract the right kind of players?
Well, first you have to define what you're really after, because you did mention that even the military uses airsoft as a tool, right?
Right.
The operative word being tool. So in training, the tool could be anything. It could be an airsoft gun, it could be paintball, it could be water balloons, or pea shooters. The game remains the same.
Mm.
The goals remain the same. The tools change. Okay. So in my case, I don't see milsim as the end all or form ng airsoft. I'd
Mm.
rather go back. I'd rather go back to the beginning where it was more open to everyone,
Mm.
because the name of the game at that time was just to have fun, or maybe man versus man contest. Okay, hunter versus hunted. Yun yung game.
Mm.
But to look at it from, I find it very myopic. If you only look at it from the military point of view.
Right.
Because even when they say it might be interesting to have airsoft integrated into ROTC,
Mm.
I don't think so. Because as you said, I mean, there people are interested or looking at the possibility of putting airsoft into ROTC just so they could have fun.
Mm.
When it's not fun anymore, when they have to walk so far, climb so high, you know, stand under, or sweat it out under the sun, get drenched under the rain, get muddy, not have comfortable place to sleep in, not eat regular meals. It's gonna go back, but it'll have the same problems as before,
Mm.
di ba?
That's
You
right.
like those people who want to get the feel of what it's like to be a ranger, a delta, or a SWAT, or SAC. They enjoy the hardship because that's what they want. They want to get the feeling. But if there's anything you notice, they only want to experience. They only want the experience, but not give the commitment.
Mm. Now,
Diba?
just saying that nowadays, what's happening is a sort of an arms race where there's now a stronger emphasis on who's got, mine is bigger than yours or mine is more powerful than yours. And sometimes the emphasis is changing from simply just having fun with friends and more of a I want to hurt somebody. So uh,
It, I
so
think it's a phenomenon common to most interest groups.
Hmm.
Para din yan nung para din yan nung Friday night drag races.
Green Hills.
Oh yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
Di ba?
Don't ask me how, but I remember those.
Yeah, bukasan ng hood, di ba?
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Fast and Furious in the 80s. So Ray, what would you like to say as words of encouragement to future players who may want to take up this sport?
Well, if I'm going to invite them and if I'm going to have recruits, I might as well train them or teach them the proper way. So first and foremost is I would just tell them to be mindful of the types of game that they're playing. and to have a different mindset on what airsoft is. If, let's say, you're introduced into what is airsoft now from other groups, so as much as possible I'd convince them to think differently, and as much as possible I would like them to try playing with us first, no, with seasoned veterans, to find out how it works, no. It's like the proper indoctrination for those who want to join the sports. So much so para we can always leave a legacy that this is how airsoft should be played. This is how airsoft started in the Philippines, and that we want to maintain this type of culture in airsoft as much as possible.
Mm.
So yun,
Well,
I invite them as much as possible, you play with us. That's why sometimes when they go to other fields, naku-culture shock sila eh. Pero sabi niya, ba't ganun kayo maglaro? Ba't ganun maglaro yung iba? Eh, kasi iba yung upbringing namin with airsoft. That's how we do it. And that's the proper way. That's what they're trying to point out. Yeah.
mm, I would certainly like to validate what you've said because at no time did I ever feel unsafe playing with our team at our game site. So, for those of you who'd like to find out where our game site is and our team name, do look us up on FB. It's Praetorian at Ibapa. So, Praetorian ATPB. You can find it. And for those of you who'd like to conduct team building when this pandemic is over and like to do it the airsoft way, uh, Praetorian is a seasoned team of players who can give your company the experience that it's looking for in terms of building as a team, uniting and strategizing. And Rex can certainly help us to put it together. So with that, I'd like to thank Ray for joining us and Rex.